Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Solo Thoughts, and today I want to talk about my favorite car, and that's the McLaren F1. In part of this video, I'm actually going to be focusing on somewhat of a dying breed, and that's pretty much the big engine supercar, and obviously the McLaren F1 is one of them. Now, since Gordon Murray, who was the father of the original McLaren F1, recently unveiled his new T50 supercar, it sort of got me thinking in terms of how differently it's designed versus the modern supercar or hypercar that sort of tends to come out every year nowadays. And it got me thinking, automakers genuinely have just become extremely marketable, or I guess in more layman's terms you can just call them a little bit more greedy. Let's go with the phrase profit focused. I guess that's a better word to use. But since Gordon Murray Automotive sort of unveiled the T50, the entire design philosophy of the car was focused on lightweight and responsiveness and a fun driving experience. There's some obvious design and engine similarities between the old McLaren F1 and the new T50, obviously being the V12 engine, the new car being obviously faster and lighter. But one thing I did want to touch on is like why the F1 and why was it so special. So I guess for the few people who don't really know about that car, it was a lightweight manual gearbox supercar that broke the top speed record back in 1998 at 240 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. And it stayed number one for the next couple decades. Now imagine how many chances auto manufacturers had to get that notoriety and that free publicity that that top speed record brings, but McLaren F1 stayed there for close to 20 years. Imagine why. It was just that much of a well-built and well-designed car. And make no mistake, it did come from the brain of an ex-F1 engineer, so it came from somebody who knew how to package and design a car extremely efficiently. And for me personally, as a kid, it was almost like a dream trying to imagine what it would be like to sit in that middle seat of that car with those two passenger seats to either side of you, driving 240 miles an hour with a screaming V12 behind your ears. Hopefully before I die I get a chance to do just that. Yeah, it was something that, you know, guys like me growing up, anybody like me growing up would dream about. And even visually, those crazy golden doors, absolutely beautiful, and the gold lining inside the engine bay, it was just something out of a magazine that you can't even imagine existing in real life, but it did, and it made a lot of headlines back in the day. The people who own them to this day, that's the problem. They can't really enjoy them anymore because they cost upwards of $20 million. So at this point, it's more of like a piece of art or something that's historically significant, so much to the point where you can't really take the risk of going out and possibly breaking something on it. So I guess it's sort of like another added benefit that the T50 is coming out, because those who actually want to enjoy and experience a pure visceral or streamlined driving experience, they can do just that in the newer car. Maybe kids like me who are growing up, or even those who are a little bit older than me who have successful businesses and have money to spend on a car like that, they can now. It's gonna go for 2.8 million, but I'm sure it's gonna go up in value as there's only gonna be 100 made. And if you genuinely want to compare all the top speed machines that came ever since the McLaren F1, they all used forced induction. They were never naturally aspirated internal combustion engines. And the new T50, it weighs 2,174 pounds. It's a NA V12 that screams all the way to 12,100 to 12,400 RPM redline, which is crazy. That's F1 or motorcycle numbers. But the craziest part is the fact that the car revs from 0 RPM all the way to 12,000 RPM in less than half a second. So that's, I can't physically, mentally, I can't even imagine how quick that is. It's ridiculous. And on top of that, if that fan on the back of the car is any indication, the car is even better aerodynamics and better downforce. So all around is going to be a better car. Oh, not to mention, I think the old F1 was notorious for having a crappy AC, like crappy creature comforts, but the AC on this one actually works. The power steering is actually great, as opposed to nothing on the F1. The lights actually help you see at night versus almost holding up a lantern at night with the F1. But see, the biggest reason why the T50 is so important to me personally is because of the fact that it's sort of the last great internal combustion engine that I think the automotive community will ever see, before we all essentially move on to electric hybrid or hybrid turbo powertrains, which pretty much we already are. But it's sort of nice to stop that electric momentum, take a deep breath, and just marvel in the creation that is this car. And And in a way, it is a bit of a celebration in terms of how far we've come, honestly. See, the old McLaren F1 had 12 cylinders, just like this one, but the height of the cylinder, I believe it was about around 120 millimeters or so, and this one is now 80 millimeters, so the engine itself is now shorter, so it sits lower. So those are the type of design elements of this car that sort of make it so unique and so great. And the fact that it can rev so high. This is probably the closest thing to an F1 experience that any normal person will ever be able to get, or a normal rich person will be able to experience. It is a nice capture of a point in time in terms of how far we've come, what we can do with engines nowadays, and celebrating the technical achievement that is the internal combustion engine. And honestly, it feels nice. That's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Now I'm gonna go check and see if the bank will loan me about $2.8 million.